I think this episode ranks as my number one episode in terms of fun that I've had. And Dr. Jason is the best. I met him through one of my best friends, and you can clearly see why he's built such strong relationships and why Therabody's been so successful. Remember, if you enjoy the show today, be a friend, tell a friend. Thanks, guys.
Explore the minds and marketing strategies behind today's winning brands and businesses. Tap into the power of the creator economy with Earned by Creator IQ. Here's Conor Begley.
So the funny part about how Dr. Jason and I got to know each other was actually, and I think I've told you this story in pieces, but one of my best friends, the best man at my wedding, was down in LA, and he trains athletes, right? It's a big thing, a guy named Gabe Rangel. And he brought home this contraption that scared the daylights out of me. I didn't know what it was. It was loud, it was noisy. It looked like it was like a gun. He's like, this thing's going to be the new thing. And I'm like, I don't know if that's going to be the new thing, man. And so, so I actually got introduced to you guys. This had to be like 8 years ago, 9 years ago. It was like a long time ago. Like,
yeah,
that was kind of a big part of the founding story, right? He was working at Unbreakable at the time. And then that was actually part of the founding journey, right?
totally. Gabe saw me selling out of the back of my car, literally. And it was really cool to meet him and a couple of the guys there, Jamal Liggins, and their belief in me. It was really cool to have that, especially at that stage where I was sort of breaking into sports and athletics where I hadn't really been before with the product. And then Gabe just being so supportive. And he still is to this day. I mean, you and I could talk so much about him right now, about giving him crap about different things, but he's such a good dude. And he's been such a help still to this day. Unbreakable Performance was sort of funny. It's a breakthrough. Like, it gave me access to a lot of athletes pre, during, and post, not just after for recovery and stuff. And I started learning a lot there. A lot of the things that we apply to our athletes now are things that started there.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like every entrepreneur has that, like, I was selling things out of the back of my car story. When we first started the company, I remember I stayed in an Airbnb. I'd go to New York, didn't want to spend any money on hotels. So I stayed in an Airbnb, and it was like a shared room. I was like, this is kind of weird. It was like 30 bucks a night. I go in, and it's a tiny, like, fourth floor walk up New York building. There's about 3 feet of walking space, right? Width. And then there's like a sink. I go around the corner, and there's like a cubby. And this woman has built stilts and put a mattress on top and had a mattress underneath with like curtains that you closed. So to like close yourself in. And the mattress was on the ground. And she's like, oh, you sleep in there. I was like, what? Like, it was just like, oh,
That's
shit.
like a submarine.
Yeah. It was crazy. Normally I kind of brag about the guest at the beginning. I didn't get to do that. And I think I want to quickly recap your story, because I think a lot of the times people look at the last few years and what happened, and they don't see kind of the beginning. And this is like 17-year overnight success story, right? So just for the people that don't know, you originally started on the construction side back in 2007, won some awards for pine flooring design and others. Then you had somebody steal $100,000 from you, then had some family, right? Got divorced with young kids, which is an incredibly tough experience. Had to move in with your parents, then decided to be a chiropractor, then major motorcycle accident, then chiropractic school took forever, longer than you'd expected. Then you became a chiropractor and you hated it. Then you're trying to start Theragun and you're excited about it, but you're not sure if it's going to happen, if it's not going to happen. And then tell me about, you kind of had a breakthrough in 2015 around some athletes getting involved. So tell me a little bit about that story. From there forward, what kind of happened with Theragun that caused it to grow so quickly?
Well, like I was saying a minute ago, I thought the way I was going to save the world was through physical therapists and chiropractors. I understood that language. I understood what it was like to implement something like that in a practice. So I thought that's where I was going to go. And the challenge I had was these guys are taking weeks to decide whether or not they were going to buy one gun. And I was like, it's not scalable. I can't do this. I'm spending all my time going around and following up with these guys. And Unbreakable Performance is a great example. You know, James Anderson, at the time, he's playing for the Patriots, still a really good friend, a great guy. And he was really intrigued in what it would do. And so I really experimented with him and Chuck Liddell. There's a bunch of different people that came in and out of that place. And I got a chance to experiment with them. The light started coming on. And one day, just really quick, I used to carry my Theraguns and put them underneath the boxing ring. I don't know if you ever saw Unbreakable, but there was a boxing ring and I had a room underneath. To talk about your bed, little cubby. It was a little cubby. I would leave my stuff down there, and then I'd come back the next morning and I'd try and get there around 5:30 or 6 o'clock, which is really tough to do in LA. to be right on time.
Yep.
So I would show up and my Theraguns would be up in the gym floor and the guys would be using them. And I'd get so mad at them. Like, what are you doing? You can't take my stuff and you don't know what you're doing. I really started watching. One day I walked in and they did it again. And I just stood there and watched them for a minute. And I was like, oh my gosh, they know how to use this. And I didn't teach them. So I was like, wait a second. So I started walking around. I mean, Terrell Pryor there was a bunch of guys that were there at the time. And I was asking them, like, what does this do for you? And like, oh my gosh, it takes the tension away. Lactic acid goes away. I still feel like I can. So I'm listening to this thinking, what the heck? That's when it really into the sports world. And that's when it really started to take off, because suddenly now they had budgets, they had money. You know, they weren't negotiating with me on $100. They were just like handing me money. Like, thank you, give this to me. Donald Penn, I remember him. He was holding on to the Theragun there and he was like pushing it on his quad and he was pushing really hard. And I said, dude, if you can stop that motor, I'll give it to you for free. Like 10 minutes, he was trying to stop it and it wouldn't stop. Back in the day, that thing was so strong. But I learned a lot from that experience, like you said. And there was a moment, what we call the Kyrie moment. I don't know how popular that is nowadays, but at the 2016 NBA Finals, when the Warriors were playing the Cavaliers, it was game 5. Kyrie's back was spasming like crazy. And the head physio of the team was a friend of mine. And I'd shown him what to do, kind of some protocols. Months earlier, we were working together in New Orleans. So Kyrie took this out on the floor, and players can ask to bring anything on the floor if they want, but it's typically not something you bring on. If you do, you have to cover it with a towel. So Steve's out there working on Kyrie, trying to cover it with a towel, like trying to give me some camera time. Like, he was such a stud. So it happened 4 times in the fourth quarter, and ABC finally zoomed in on Kyrie and they said, we keep having timeouts because Kyrie's back spasming. What is that thing they're using? What's that blue thing? That was a weekend, and we sold out that weekend. It was insane. That was the summer of 16, and I'd been to the X Games. I'd been to the CrossFit Games. I was selling 10 a day, and I thought that was the best thing in the world. And then suddenly this happens, and we like sold like thousands in a weekend. Like, what the heck? Just those experiences for me, I started realizing like the sporting world, female, male, like whatever, Paralympics, whatever, that they draw so many eyes. And if I could have them tell the story, then I felt like that was really the way to introduce it to the world. At the same time, I was building these relationships with physical therapists, with different teams in Europe and in the States. And because those guys are also a mouthpiece, like they would also talk about it, but they didn't have social media and everything. And that's another thing too. Like in 2015, think about where Instagram was. 16, it was nothing. It was like people had 1,000 followers. It wasn't like it was now. So we kind of grew up with Instagram, and luckily our product was something fun to post. It looked cool on the camera. And so that was another thing. I think it's just timing. I waited 8.5 years for that.
The kind of rise of athletes as basically media entities, right? Like, you look at LeBron James, he's got a bigger following than ESPN or any of the other big publications, or Kyrie probably does as well, right? Like Ronaldo, who's a close partner of you guys, they are now the biggest publishers in the world, in addition to all the other creators. And so, yeah, you guys really, really capitalized on that in a meaningful way, it seems like.
You know, I have to be honest. I can't say that it was me having this genius idea sitting in my clinic being like, oh my God, I'm going to take this to the athlete. It just happened. And I think that's one of the best parts about it. It happened. It was like a wildfire. I mean, once it started, it just didn't stop. It went from hockey to NBA to Major League Baseball. It was just nuts. And then we suddenly had a bunch of access to teams because they were just giving us access. Come in and show our trainers how to do that. And you probably know it's not easy to get into the back rooms of some of these teams, and for them to just open the door and come back. And I really do my best to create a relationship of trust with people. And in that world, posting and taking selfies and everything is just not my thing. I think that's what allowed me to continue to get past those barriers where people, they had this sort of trust, you know. And I tell people this a lot. I get to work on a lot of different people in the world, some that are more famous than others. And the respect that they have for me as a chiropractor allows me to have a relationship with them that's different. So I learned that along the way, and I needed to honor that. So I feel like that's also something that helped us grow, is just recognizing how to read the room, you know?
I mean, it has to create trust, right? In terms of like, okay, This guy isn't just just invent some product, right? He did this with a very specific purpose. He's thought a lot about it, the effects of it, etc. What's interesting for me on the business side, so obviously I think you are the founder, helped invent the product. As the business scaled, it seems like your business partner, who's now the CEO or your partner in crime there, played a big role. I thought the story of like how you met him was fascinating. You had 500 units, got down to 2, had no money. Tell that story. I think it's so good. You got to tell it again.
It's part of the story that people don't hear a lot of. The motorcycle accident caused some legal issues. I had made a promise to a manufacturer that I was going to buy. I said, can you make me 1,000 of these? I talked them into shipping me 500 so I could test it out and try the waters and see how it goes. And at the same time, I had 4 business partners. And I had a really good friend of mine that I started out with in 2009. And then a year or so later, I realized that wasn't going to work. So I had to buy back the company and I sold it to somebody else, his shares and his wife's shares. They bought it, realized they weren't doing, and they're nightmare stories. This could be a whole nother podcast on just this part of it. They're horrible stories about people that were lying to me, stealing money. And then at one point I met these 2 NFL players and I thought that was it. I'm like, oh my God, these guys are going to help me. They have money, they have relationships. So we went and met with one of their business managers in Santa Monica. And I'm sitting in this room with his team and the 3 of us, and I'm presenting what I think they needed to hear in order for us to get approval to get $500,000 to build this business. And as I'm presenting it, one of the guys stands up and leaves the room. He's the son of the owner. So he excuses himself, says, hey, I have another appointment. I got to go. 5 minutes later, he walks back in and he says, hey, I don't know why, but I feel like you guys need to talk to this guy. And I'm like, oh man, I'm right in the middle of my pitch. Like, leave me alone. So he walks in and sits down. And Conor, like you can imagine, for 10 years now, I mean, at the time it was probably 8 years, I had heard everything from family members, friends, strangers, things like, do you know what I would do if I were you? Do you know what you should do with that? I have someone I can introduce you to that's going to help. I had heard it all. I could tell what was a lie and what wasn't a lie because I'd been through it. Everything this guy was saying was like magic. And he was talking and I was like, oh my God, he's so right. He gets up and leaves. I start having this argument with these 2 NFL players that's the guy we need on the team. And they're like, screw him. He's too big of a fan because he knew one of the guys. I kind of reached out to that guy a couple months later and I was like, hey, listen, can we talk? Yeah, sure. Let's meet. We met at Nick's in Manhattan Beach. And we're sitting at Nick's and he goes, tell me your story. So I told him the story. And at the end of the story, he says, I need to introduce you to my boss, Ben Nazarian. Have you heard of him? And I said, no, I haven't heard of him. He said, he has an incubator where he brings in companies that he finds, and he kind of listed off a few that he'd done. And I was like, oh, wow, it's great. So that's how I met Ben. But the lead up to that was literally the NFL players, when they came on, I had 2 products left. I had 2 Theraguns. And one of them I had to get back from Anderson Company, the investment guys in Colorado, because I sent one there just for them to demo. Dude, that was like all I could do to get those 2 products because that's the only thing I had left. Timing was so crazy. And then, I finally met Ben. I convinced his team and this guy that I met that I needed to treat him because they were like, you have to have your pitch deck together. You got to have all your stuff. Like, this is a legit businessman, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't care who he is. If I can't treat him, he's not going to understand what the deck says. He won't believe it. So I said, I have to treat him. And so they get his secretary. It was this whole thing. I remember this being, everyone around me was so crazy. And I had treated up to this point, not to boast, but I'd treated some of the most famous people in the world. And I didn't have to go through this to meet them. So I was just so frustrated. So anyway, I show up to his office in Beverly Hills, the 4th or 5th floor of the Rolex building, downtown Beverly Hills. I'm walking with my chiropractic table, set it up and there were 2 Theraguns in my hand, like, okay, waiting for him to walk through the door. And he walks in the door and he had this huge smile on his face. And we had a really cool experience. I treated him for 5 or 6 minutes. He stood up and was just like, what the heck is that? That's the most amazing thing. Well, so at the time, literally, those were the 2 products that I had left. Those are the 2 Theraguns I had left that I was treating him with. So he's like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, first of all, I need to buy these 1,000 that I bought from this guy in China. I even thinking about it still to this day is just crazy how it all happened. he
When you
was
think about that, literally that one conversation doesn't happen, or that one phone call doesn't happen. And, you don't meet Ben, who knows what happens to the company and where you get to. I mean, obviously you had a great product, you had good relationships, it was moving in the right direction for sure, but this is a pretty pivotal moment.
timing is everything. I think they say luck is timing. It wouldn't be what it is today had I not met him at that point, because the timing of the world, you think about when COVID hit, what we were doing and our message at the time, it was just a lot of timing. And, I'm sure you and I could talk about this for a minute, but I learned in 2011 that this timing and this product and what it was going to do for the world was way bigger than me. And I just had to kind of pay attention to what's going on around me. So I was there at the right time. I made a goal every day. Tony Robbins talks about changing 1% a day. And at the end of the year, you're 365%. So I thought every morning when I woke up, who can I put this on today that's going to share the message? Where can I go? I can get this out there so people, because dude, just like Gabe and all the guys in the early days, everyone was like, oh my God, that's amazing. What is that? I knew that would take off. I had a goal every morning when I woke up. Where am I going today? US track team, UCLA, USC, football, a local gym, the Yard down in Hermosa Beach, like anywhere I could go to get this on people that were going to talk about it was my number one goal. And as that swell came, when we finally had the money and we finally had the product, it was like everyone was waiting to buy it. It was a really serendipitous thing that I didn't have a ton to do with, other than I was just there at the right time.
I'd give you more credit than that. I think that statement you said very specifically, which is like, basically, I'm going to go give away free treatments to people, right? Help them have that experience with the product. And I'm going to focus on people that can have a big impact on the brand. It sounds obvious looking in reverse, but that's not something a lot of people do. And like, I think that clearly, I mean, especially if you look at the data, right? We look at the data. This has driven the vast majority of the growth for the brand, is that people sharing it on social, people sharing it with each other, and people that are particularly influential doing that, whether it's an athlete or a celebrity or whatever. That's pretty cool. And it probably doesn't happen if you're not based in LA, right? Like you intentionally chose to be in LA.
I was talking to a guy in the Uber. I was in South Carolina and we had a long Uber ride and he was asking me who I was. And I said that to him. I said that what happened for me would have never happened in any other city in the world, I don't think. To be able to do that in LA where so many different people, every off season, this is where people come in every sport. And to be able to access their, I call them specialty training facilities, where there are guys like Gabe that are working one-on-one with some of the best athletes in the world, to be able to just get it into their hands and have them experience that feeling. I just had a feeling, because I'd seen it so many times, that's what was going to ride us to the promised land.
I mean, the thing too is like you personally did it as well. Even as the business scaled, you were the one continuing to kind of build these relationships. I'd be curious, have you guys started playing around in like the college NIL space at all yet? Have you guys started working with college athletes? I bet you have.
Yeah. Do you know who John Brinkus is? John Brinkus was a sports scientist. Remember they have sports science on ESPN?
Yeah.
About trajectory and loft and all that stuff.
I know that guy. Yeah.
He's a really good friend of mine, and he started a thing called NIL House. For those who don't know, NIL means name, image, likeness. And that's a new law that was passed so that high school and college kids can get paid for their NIL. So he started this broadcast where he was educating the world about NIL, from the athletes on how to use it, how to leverage their name and image and likeness to gain some sort of financial benefit. And then he was also teaching the world what it is. So we sponsored that and we got into that early on. I mean, we worked with Bryce. There was a bunch of college athletes.
For those that don't know.
Young. Yeah. Worked with a lot of those guys that were like, they loved the product. They used it a lot, but man, the prices for some of these guys was like, they're asking for professional prices. But yeah, we've gotten into that space. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. We have products that we get to donate because of different situations, the circumstances with inventory and things. And my focus is donating them to those types of groups, whether it's the Elite 11, which is an NFL, not even NFL, it's like a quarterback camp. They bring all the best quarterbacks together, but getting into those guys' hands, not having them pay for it, just getting it into their hands and having that be part of their routine. You know, look at Trevor Lawrence. I got to work with him early on, and him seeing what this did for him, you know, it's opened up these doors at Jacksonville with a lot of other players. And even in his family. So it definitely starts, and it's kind of the same concept we talked about a minute ago, is getting into the hands of people that are influential. And so for me to get it into these guys' hands, they're going to be the leaders in the world one day. I mean, no one heard of Trevor Lawrence 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I mean, if you were paying attention to that space, you did, but as a whole, people didn't. So NIL, I think, is going to be a big opportunity for everyone, really. It's kind of the wild, wild west right now with that.
It seems a little crazy. But again, to your point, I mean, I don't see a reason why they shouldn't be able to monetize who they are. Like, it makes sense to me that they should be able to do it.
I totally agree with that.
If you can join the military, you should be able to make money. And it's funny. So obviously athletes built the brand. I think, there's a lot written about Ben talking about athletes, and basically just like people trust them, right? Because they take what they do really seriously. They take their bodies really seriously. It does seem like you guys started to branch into some of the social media celebrities, creators like a Karlie, Kloss, etc. Have you gotten involved in that at all? Or is that mostly the team? Like, how did you think about branching outside of pure athletes in terms of who you worked with?
It's a great question, and I wish more people would understand this. I'm a chiropractor, and when I first had my practice, I wasn't working on celebrities and I wasn't working on professional athletes. I was working on everyday people, and that's what made me think that chiros and physios were the key, because everyday people were walking in, from someone that sat at a desk all day to someone that was in a car accident. Like, there's all of these different people that were coming in and out of these clinics. So I felt like, and I still feel like, the world is being robbed by thinking this is only for athletes. I want to make sure that I get this into other people's hands. Karlie Kloss wouldn't be seen as an athlete, but I'm telling you, she uses our products all the time. She's a really good friend of mine, and her voice is really, really strong in the young women world. She has a foundation that she fosters these underprivileged girls and teaches them how to code, and she's got some really cool things. So that's a really good example of being able to get it into a person's hands that has a broad reach. And I don't care if you're an athlete or if you're a TV analyst or if you're a supermodel, to be able to get it into your hands, understand what it is, and then they take it around. I mean, the entertainment world, there's celebrities and entertainers that I work with. So I build a relationship of trust, then I support those people. I kind of have this process that I go through. If I can have a relationship of trust with someone, then I can support them. And what does it look like if I support them? After support, I know what's going to happen after that. They're going to start talking about it, whether it's with their makeup artist, their hair person, their business manager, their security guy. Somehow that stuff's going to get around, and then there's going to be this sales. It's a slower burn. It's a slower growth process, but I love it. Word of mouth is the best advertising we have.
So let's do a test here. I'm curious. So these are the top 10 social media influencers for 2022. I'm curious to see how many of them you have a personal relationship with. So number one was, let's do a test. So you got Chris Brickley, number one.
Chris is a really good dude. What do you want me to say? Yes or no?
You just say yes or no.
Yes.
No. Yes. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Paris Saint-Germain.
Yes.
Okay. Ronaldo.
Yes.
Okay. The AFL.
No.
Okay. Scotty James.
Yes. Scotty's on there? Wow.
Yeah. Number 5. He talked about you 34 times, 300,000 followers. Miami Heat.
Tyler Hero. I have a relationship with him. It's funny. We could talk about that, but I was supposed to have gone there several times to work with the trainers on the team, and it just never ends up working out. But yes.
Well, they're fans of you. They talk about you. So that's good. AC Milan.
Yes.
Okay. Philippe Gustavo.
Felipe. He's my yeah, he's a really good friend. Yes.
Okay. Karlie Kloss. Obviously.
Yes.
Know that one.
Yeah.
Kevin De Bruyne.
Kevin De Bruyne. He's the best, man. He is so low key. He is so low key. The guy goes out and just performs. He's awesome.
So anyway, so he's got 21 million fans, right? Talked about 8 times last year. And again, I think part of the reason I did that, I was curious. I didn't know it was going to happen when I threw this out there. Like that approach, what you're doing, right? In terms of building deep relationships, building them over time, having it be very centered on like actual efficacy of product and like all those kinds of things. That is the pattern we see again and again and again at these. I mean, there's been around $28 billion brands created kind of in this space using influencers, social, et cetera. And like, we've just seen the playbook repeatedly. Everything you're talking about is exactly the way that we've seen it work. And just again, from a numbers perspective, You guys are up from 2018 to 2022. That social conversations are up 21x during that period, which is just nuts. I love that you just know all those guys and girls. All right, so let's keep going. So I think you had a really pivotal moment in 2022. So you partnered with North Castle, raised $165 million. I mean, it is a tough time to raise money. So if people are writing you a $165 million check, they're big believers. What did that moment feel like? Was that like a really validating moment to have? Because again, go back to 2015, you're selling them out of your car, 2014. Tell me what that was like.
It's a process. And part of that process is really putting my money where my mouth is when I say that this is bigger than me, and being able to relinquish a lot of my say in how things move or what products we make. And the due diligence that North Castle did on us, we did the same on them. And everywhere I went, everyone had nothing but great things to say about them. So as that started to take on a life of its own, it's almost been a year ago we started this process. It was a really interesting thing. I tell people it was like a masterclass in so many different things that I just wasn't familiar with. But having them come on and realizing the ability that they had to magnify our message was really, really exciting for me. They have access to some of the best people in the world. They have great relationships with some of the best organizations, whether it's a gym, a governing body. They have a really good reputation. So I'm super excited. And I tell people this all the time. If you think about how many Theraguns we've sold, let's just say we sold to 1% of the world. What's that, 8 million people? That's 1% of the world. Like, I want at least 10. Like, what's wrong with 10% of the world? So that's been my focus. And if whatever it takes for that to happen, I'm willing to do whatever it is. And North Castle came on. They brought some really heavy heat with them, some heavy hitters that knew what they were doing, that know what they're doing. So I'm excited because I tell people this, we're just getting started. 3 years ago, we had one product. What's happened in the last 3 years, we still are trying to, the dust hasn't settled. So we're still trying to figure out how to present the products. And we had this person submit this from Kazakhstan today. He's a dog sled racer and he uses Theragun on his dogs. What demographic is that? How do I get to that guy? So for me, I feel like there's so much possibility, so many opportunities for us to get out there. Anyone that has animals and I run into them, they tell me stories about using Theragun on their animals. There's a huge opportunity. North Castle coming on with their heavy hitters and their perspective of this business is really going to help, I think, amplify us even stronger. I mean, our goal is to get back to where we were in the beginning of 22 and even more as a company and as a brand.
Yeah, 100%. I've had really good experiences with North Castle too. So we work with a lot of private equity firms and it seems like really good guys. So let's talk a little bit about some of the principles that I think help to guide your life. A few of them are character is the ability to follow through with a decision after the emotion of making the decision is gone. I really liked that one. I feel like you're big on the trusting your gut versus paralysis analysis kind of thing. Talk to me a little bit about what are some of the things that you think about on a daily basis that you think have, led to both success in business as well as just kind of success in your life.
That character thing is really one of the most powerful things in my life. I get put in situations many times where promises are made. And in this world nowadays, it's easy to let those slide and you don't hold up to the promise that you made. So for me, it's really doing that. If you look at my task list in a day, it's really, how can I support Felipe Gustavo? What does that look like? His father has some issues. How can I support that? And that to me is where you really become important to somebody. And it also creates a really authentic relationship. And that word's been overused in the last few years, but that's a really big one for me. Having my own personal routine, making sure that I have time to meditate, to work out, to be with my family, to engage with the people that refuel me. I'm still on a mission. I still have a lot left in my tank to get this thought process, this way of thinking about your body and self-care. I feel like there's a huge opportunity there. I'm engaged in a quantum medicine program. I think there's a lot of really cool opportunities in that space as people start to understand what medications are and how to take care of their bodies and the food and the diets. There's so many different opportunities there. So I'm super excited about that. And that has also given me perspective on creating more products. So I think setting goals, I have a mantra that I say every morning, and it literally, I think, sets me up for success in a really cool way that I've just implemented that in my life. They say that the 5 people that are closest to you are indicative of who you are as a person. And I like to surround myself with some of the best people in the world. And I try to do that in a sincere way so that I bring as much to the table as they bring. That goes back to that character thing. If Felipe's got something wrong, Matt Frazier, some of you don't know, he's the CrossFit king for several years, smashed his knee up playing pickleball. I wish I could give him crap about that. Of all things, right? Obviously, I follow him on Instagram and I saw it and I was like, oh my God, he has to have this product. So I sent him the product. I didn't ask for anything for free. I don't even want him to post about it. I just said, hey, when you get it, call me and I'm going to show you how to use this for what you're dealing with. I don't know how to explain that, Conor, but that just gets me going. I love that. I don't want him to post. I asked him not to post. It's not about that. It's about really helping him learn how to use this. Because if that happens, the next person he sees that blows their knee out, guess what he's going to say? You got to get one of these things. And it's the best feeling to understand, but that recipe really works for us. It works for me. I've seen it happen so many times, but the reward that I get on the other side of it isn't financial. It's just the satisfaction that I'm helping someone and they're going to help other people. So that's the part that I love about our company is, yes, I'm getting into Matt Frazier's hands. Yes, he's a big shot and he's amazing at what he does, but he's also going to be a mouthpiece to a lot of the people in the world, in his space, in his world that aren't big shots, that aren't big athletes. And that sort of trickle down effect is something that I really, going back to what I said a minute ago, Conor, like if I wake up every day, what can I do to make a difference? What can I do to help this mission move forward? For me, it's just getting it into the right people's hands,
There's so much there. I have like 4 things I wanted to comment on. 2 things. One, there's a lot of studies on, highly productive and efficient people. And that question you're asking myself, it's funny because I ask myself the same thing, what is the most impactful thing I can do today, right? What is the thing I can do that moves the needle the most? And that tends to be the people that end up having the most success because it's just what you're focused on. The second thing on the satisfaction you get, I feel that really deeply. I remember walking through for the first time. So Alo Yoga is a big client. And this is in our early days. And I remember walking through their offices. I just had a meeting with them. I walk through the offices and I see somebody sitting there on their computer using the software. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, can I take a photo? Can I take a photo of you doing this? This is so really awkward, right? But I was like, the fact that I am making somebody's life easier, better, more efficient, whatever it is, that's what gets me motivated. I tell people all the time, they don't believe me. I'm like, I really don't care about the money. It's not why I do it. It's a nice side benefit, but it's not why I do it.
I can relate to that. I like to use this analogy. If I could take a picture of my life in 5 years from now, what is that picture? What does it look like? I was walking through an airport the other day and a guy's and a wife, they're probably in their 70s and he's using a mini on her back. Oh my God, I have to take a picture of this. Is that weird? I'm not going to post it. It goes into my bank of fuel for my fire. It's oh my God, that's exactly what I hoped for. And the early days too, I think you probably have had this, you have people that call you crazy. I was called crazy by a lot of people. Some of them that were even closest to me. I'm not one to go prove people wrong, but I think revenge is sweet because by the time you have it, it doesn't really mean anything anymore.
On that point, and this actually goes to one other principle I want to ask you about. So I had a similar in different ways, right? You start your company, you have a variety of people that say stuff. I remember the CEO of our old company, I was having a meeting with somebody else and he walked in and he's like, wait, tell me your idea. I told him, he's like, oh, that'll be copied in 18 months. I'm like, all right, man. And it had some previous interactions like that. And then separately, we get going and we're a year in and we're not making any money, right? We're making $1,000 a month, literally nothing. And I remember talking to my co-founder and I was like, I'm going to drag this thing kicking and screaming into existence, whether it wants to exist or not, right? That's going to happen. And I told that similar thing to a mentor of mine. And he's like, Conor, it's sometimes it's okay to move on. It's no. So this is the principle. And I love this one.
Keep that thought. I have to say something really fast. One of my best friends through my life, like you and Gabe, he came to me to console me and said, bro, I think it's time you let it go. sounds like, no, you don't get it. Like, you don't see what I see. That rings so true to me too. I get it.
So this is the phrase I really like. I'd never heard this before. I heard you say it in an interview. The amount of resistance you face is directly proportional to where you're going to end up when the resistance is gone. And I think in both of our cases, or in most cases for any kind of entrepreneur, you face incredible resistance at the beginning. Nobody believes in it. Nobody wants to buy into it. Nobody wants to invest. You have to really fight uphill. And so I just really liked that one. And I think it's clearly evident in what's happened with you.
That's a really powerful thing that I learned. I could give you so many different analogies, but I feel like there's a difference between, and I'm really starting to understand this a little bit. I think Joe Dispenza or Steve Kotler, someone recently said that people looking for opportunities to learn are going to run into situations that are tough for them. So I don't look for resistance. I just have learned to sense where it is. And like I mentioned to you, this quantum medicine program, that's a challenge. That's really hard. It's not easy. Now, it's not self-inflicted resistance, but it's this self-inflicted learning and that process of learning and getting through that experience. And then on the other side, being like, oh my God, that was amazing. That's something that I think I'm bringing on myself. But to your point, there's also things that happen in the business world that I'm not bringing on. And it's naysayers, it's economy, it's boats stuck out on the water. I mean, there's all these different things that really cause this sort of resistance. And I've watched it. I honestly can't say that I'm this super smart guy when it comes to this. I just watched it happen so many times. I went through resistance. I just kept having faith and kept having faith. And what's interesting to me is that part of the ingredients of that process is almost giving up hope. You have to get to that point where you're like, man, F this. I can't do it anymore. And within hours or days, something happens and then it starts to rebound. And I call it the slingshot effect. You pull that slingshot back a little bit, you're going to get a little bit. You pull that slingshot back really far, it's going to be able to shoot you so much further ahead. I've watched that so many times. That's another thing that I'm excited about having North Castle come on, understanding that recipe, that process. It's not novel. It's just worked and it's happened so many times. So yeah, I think I wanted to just break it down a little bit because I think resistance sometimes seems like I'm just slamming my head against the wall, but that's not what it is. It's like I'm looking for learning opportunities, things that I can make myself better. And I'm also having to grow a company. And those two things together sometimes is a lot.
I think we're at the end of our time. I'm going to do one fun end of show question. I'm going to put you on the spot. You're going to piss somebody off, probably multiple people. I'm going to make you pick who you think's going to win because you have insider information. So you might move the betting markets. We'll see. Who is going to win MLB, NFL, NBA? Who's going to win each championship in the coming season? Pick a team.
Can I do hockey too?
You can do hockey too, yeah.
Bruins.
Okay.
Sure. Man, it's hard in the NFL because my heart's with Buffalo because I love Josh. I'm going to say Buffalo.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to say Buffalo. Let's see. Hockey, football, basketball. We're official recovery partners for the Warriors. So I'm going to piss someone off if I don't choose the Warriors. I wish Paul George didn't get hurt. I think they would have had a pretty good run. The Clippers. Yeah. Man, you got me. You put me on the spot. Minnesota.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
Karl Anthony Towns is a great dude. And so baseball, man, and it's so early on. Tampa? Is it Tampa Bay that's still undefeated?
They're hot. Yeah.
Yeah. They're up there.
I think they're like 12-0 or something like that. 11-0.
Yeah. So I think that division is going to be tough. I'm going to say the Padres.
Okay. They've been spending like they're going to win. They've been spending money.
I was at an event with the owner this last week and we were talking about how much money they're spending. It's insane.
It's nuts. Well, I really appreciate you taking out the time. This was awesome. I'm so glad we finally made it happen. It's been like 6 months in the making. Yeah. And congrats on all your personal success and the impact you've had on the world. We have 2 Theraguns. My wife's family uses it all the time. They're not professional athletes, just take good care of themselves. And so excited to see where you take it. I think you guys are going to keep killing it.
Thanks for your support, man. These types of opportunities to have this conversation with people gives people an opportunity to dig behind the scenes, deep into the brand. And And if they really understood like where our intentions are, like what my goal is as the founder, it's sort of trickled down through the company, then they'll understand we're not trying to get more shelf space at Best Buy. This is really about helping change your life. So thank you very much.
Have an actual mission. For sure, man. All right. Later.
Thanks.
Be a friend, tell a friend, and subscribe. Earned by Creator IQ. Creator IQ is your all-in-one solution to grow, manage, scale, and measure your influencer marketing program. Ready to unlock the power of the creator economy? Get started with a demo today at creatoriq.com.